A very good afternoon to all of you. This is Dr. Beena Gandhi Deori, Deputy Director, SAARC Cultural Center, Sri Lanka. I welcome you all to the SAARC Special Lecture Series 2024. We are extremely grateful to Ashwini for accepting our invitation to be a speaker in the SAARC Special Lecture Series. Welcome, Ashwini. Before we proceed with the lecture, I invite Madam Renuka Ikanaike, Director of the SAARC Cultural Center, to address.
Good afternoon. This Ashwini Natesan, an esteemed guest. It is my honor and privilege to welcome you all to today's SAARC special lecture organized by the SAARC Cultural Center. Today's the topic we are about to explore digital renaissance, how technology is reshaping culture, holds immense relevance for the entire South Asian region as we navigate the evolving digital landscape. Digital revolution has already begun reshaping the fabric of our societies, transcending boundaries and altering the way we communicate, create, and preserve culture. From virtual art galleries to the transformation of language, media, and even heritage conservation, technology is opening up new avenues of expression and innovation. The changes are rapid, far reaching, and they raise important questions about how we can leverage technology to protect, promote, and transform our rich cultural identities. The theme of today's lecture speaks directly to these challenges and opportunities. It is my great pleasure to introduce our distinguished speaker for today, Ms. Ashwini Natesan, Technology, Media and Telecommunication Law Consultant at Julius and Crazy, Sri Lanka. Ms. Natesan has worked extensively at the intersection of law and technology, with particular expertise in data protection and privacy, regulation of content on social media, and telecommunication law. Her insights will provide us with a well rounded perspective on how to navigate this new digital age while protecting our cultural assets. I would like to extend my heartfelt thanks to Ms. Natesan for joining us today and for sharing her expertise on such a critical topic. We are truly privileged to have her with us. I would also like to thank all of you who have taken the time to join us today. Your participation is key to success of this event, and I encourage you to actively engage with the speaker, ask questions, and share your thoughts as we explore this fascinating and important subject. Together, we can reflect on how technology can serve as a bridge to the future of South Asian culture while honoring the traditions that have shaped our identities. Thank you.
Thank you, Madam. In today's series of the SAARC special lecture, we have Ashwini Natesan as a speaker. Ashwini is a legal consultant and research fellow specializing in technology, media, and telecommunication, TMT law in Sri Lanka. She serves as a TMT law consultant at Julius and Creasy, which is one of Sri Lanka's oldest law firms. And also, she is a research fellow at Learn Asia, focusing on data protection, AI policy, and social media regulation. Ashwini holds an LLM from the National University of Singapore and has completed various certifications, fellowships, and programs, including AI policy. Recently, she was selected for the prestigious Media Policy Institute at the University of Oxford, and also she's a former fellow of the Internet Law and Policy Foundry. She was also one of the responsible AI subcommittee who were given the task to draft Sri Lanka's national AI strategy. With this brief introduction, I invite Ashwini to start with her lecture. And she's going to speak on a very, very important topic as how technology is reshaping culture with special reference on South Asia. Over to you, Ashwini.
Yes, so thank you for that, for making sure that this works. I always say, right when we start talking about technology, even the basic technology doesn't work, there'll be a technical glitch. We're going to talk about how technology will be affecting a culture and how it is reshaping culture. But a small PPT presentation was not working very well. So thank you for bearing with us. At the outset, I must say I'm deeply thankful to the SAARC Cultural Center, Madam Director, Deputy Director, Dr. Gandhi, all of them for having me in today's lecture because it's an important area and something that I believe warrants a lot of discussion, and I'm extremely happy to be here. For today's agenda, I've put in some slides together. It does not mean that we don't discuss out of this. We absolutely must. But this is just to give us an idea about what to expect in today's discussion. What I've tried to do is divide today's session into three broad areas: where technology is an enabler, where technology is a creator, and finally, how technology is redefining our understanding of the concept of culture. We'll also be looking at some challenges and concerns as we go along. And of course, finally, some concluding remarks. So the first is culture in the context of technology. What really is culture? Obviously, I do not need to introduce what culture is to the experts in the area. So I'm not going to go into a definition of it, but you will understand that when it comes to technology and culture, in the third part of today's discussion, I'm going to look at how it challenges the traditional notions of how we understand culture. But up until that part, the way I use culture is just in its traditional sense to understand art, artifacts, museums, anything of that nature. And I will also be drawing parallels or examples based on the context of which we are looking at it. The first part of today's discussion is how technology can enable culture. So, in the most basic sense, we are trying to see how culture can be influenced by the use of technology. It acts as an enabler in many respects. And some of those respects are what I'll be highlighting in this first section. Many of you already know of the concepts of augmented and virtual reality. But in a nutshell, augmented reality, what it does is it overlays our existing experiences in the physical world. So, for example, you walk into a museum, and in that museum, you are only not only able to see what is there physically in the museum, but you're also able to have additional features added to it. Perhaps they also show you how that particular uh, dress or that particular jewelry was worn several centuries ago. So you're able to see something on top of what is existing in the physical world, and that is augmented reality. So you're augmenting it with the reality of what is already in existence. Virtual reality, in very simple terms, it's just about using immersive technology. It can be in the form of glasses or a headset where yes, you are in your own drawing rooms and living rooms, study rooms, workspaces, but you are transported to another virtual world. And that's what we, in simple terms, usually say as the metaverse, where it is from the universe you move into another verse where you're also able to experience realities, and that is virtual reality. Now, how does augmented and virtual reality work in the context of culture? Several of you might already have experienced this. It can be that you have gone to a musical or a show, and in that show, you are able to see something that is even more immersive than what is actually there. So, yes, it's a virtual, it's not happening virtually, it's happening in person, but there is an element of augmented reality, and that can be through AR. And then VR is through which you have transformed experiences. Now, virtual reality or the metaverse gained a lot of importance during the pandemic. At that time, people were not able to travel great distances, but still they were able to experience it, have these experiences of travel. It can be through 3D act travel or 3D access to historical monuments that is available, and I'll give some examples of that as well. Or it can be through enhancing your existing visits in physical locations. For those of you who are interested, I have given some links. Museum of Other Realities is an entirely virtual museum, and I've given the link to that. And then Google Arts and Culture, they have something called the Open Heritage, where what they do is you're able to have a 3D view of the sites. It can be historical sites, some in Mexico, one in some remote part of from Pompeii, or one in some other ancient city, or it can be in a city. There's also a Gateway of India 3D tour that you can take if you're interested. So these enhance experiences, and most importantly, it also enhances accessibility to all persons. Whether you're able to travel to those locations or not, you have these enhanced experiences through augmented and virtual reality. The next one is on blockchain for authenticity or ownership. What is blockchain? For those of you who don't know, in simple terms, blockchain is the decentralized digital ledger, which means that it contains several blocks, which are actually blocks of data. And in that distributed ledger, which is decentralized across several networks, you are able to prove authenticity or ownership for works. It is not only limited to digital works, it can also be for physical artworks or art pieces. Because what you're able to do is you're able to create a tamper proof record of cultural artifacts, and provenance related issues can be solved using the blockchain technology. Are there challenges in this? Yes, and there are several red flags as well, because there are various blockchains. It depends on the one that you choose to do so. But this is increasingly becoming important, especially in the interest of transparency, because we are able to see ownership, and we are also able to make sure these transactions are transparent in nature. It makes sure that theft of art and fabrication of those documents are curbed because of blockchain. So that is definitely an enabler and a way to make sure that when it comes to culture, you're able to enhance the issues that have been traditionally associated with it. Now, the buzzword for any technology is AI. So when we talk about technology, everyone immediately associates it with artificial intelligence. What is artificial intelligence? In very simple terms, it tries to replicate human intelligence, but it's being done through the machine. So machine learning enables artificial intelligence. What about AI and culture? As an enabler of culture, AI can definitely be used, and you can see that, for example, to overcome a language barrier. A student whose first language is Nepalese wants to do some research on ancient scriptures in Sri Lanka. How will they be able to access that language? These AI tools are just not simple translators, but they are actually extremely useful in making sure that understanding of the language and grappling with its challenges are made more easy because of artificial intelligence empowered language barriers are taken care of because of this. What do these tools do? They give individuals and communities to work with each other. Previously, there could have been barriers of language, and now that is resolved because of AI tools coming into place. The other thing is it can also really support in collaborative and artistic projects. And most importantly, I think for SAARC, it's important because it will also help to create a regional identity and make sure that differences that separate the different countries can be brought together, especially when it comes to linguistic differences. This one is quite interesting because this is about cultural preservation, how technology can support with that. And one way is through crowd sourcing of cultural projects. Finance or the resources for cultural projects can always be a challenge, and crowdsourced funding has been used for various purposes. including for cultural projects. Why do I insist on its importance for cultural projects is this. What happens is individuals in their own communities are able to come together and to create a sense of cultural heritage. And there's also an individuality and a community driven effort when we crowdsource for cultural preservation. And this is just not one person, but it's a community coming together, and it shows that it can make cultural heritage even stronger and bringing them a sense of oneness amongst community members. And not only is it important from terms of engagement, but I also believe that it strengthens social cohesion and cultural identity. Based on this, I do believe that crowdsourcing of funds for cultural projects is certainly a very, very important area where technology can play a very important and enabling role for culture. I must also add that it doesn't mean that crowdsource funding is a new thing that technology has brought in, no, but it's just made it much more easy and feasible. And there is no longer a sense that when it comes to crowdsource funding, it has to be limited to a certain area. It can be quite global, and you're still able to get the funds that you need for the projects through the digitally empowered crowdsourced funding platforms that are available. Perhaps one area which most of us are aware of when it comes to impact of technologies on culture is power of communication. What has happened through communication and how that has been impacted due to technology. And certainly it has a huge impact on culture. So, for example, today's virtual lecture is made possible because of the technology that we have. That is, we have an online system through which we are able to have these discussions. But specifically in terms of culture, one very important area is that it makes it more accessible. How does technology make it more accessible to digital marketing? Now, SAARC Cultural Center has its own page on social media platforms. That's an excellent way to make sure that you have wider reach. And also, it is possible to have real time interaction. So, for example, you can have chatbots, virtual experiences, and you can also have data driven innovation. So, for example, you're able to see what kind of content actually results in a more engagement in your platform. So, for example, you have a Facebook page. You understand that one that is just having a picture has maybe 20 likes, but one that has a short video will have 200 or 250 likes. That's just a small example of how we can have data driven innovation. But predictive analysis is not only about past data. With past data, we are able to predict how it can be in the future. So, for instance, based on what content has been posted in the past, you're able to know what content you should be posting for making sure that there is wider reach. And very importantly, assistive technologies make culture more accessible for persons with disabilities too. So this is just to kind of sum up the first section on technology being a enabler and for culture. The first one is SAARC in leveraging various technologies that we have discussed. Number one, can promote regional cultural heritage. It need not be an in-person event with a huge funding. It's great if it can be, but even if not, virtual tours and exhibitions can also be made possible. Social campaigns to create a heritage for South Asia, which is already well known and well documented. It can be made more accessible to a lot of people through campaigns. Facilitating cross cultural exchange. It can be through online cultural events, digital storytelling. All of this can also go a long way. Community participation, making sure that the communities participate in the efforts of SAARC Cultural Center. Preserving and archiving of heritage. This is one which may not always be agreeable because there can be issues when we say that we want to uh, put online some of the old texts so that everyone can view it. There are others who believe that they should be protected and it cannot be freely made accessible. I would believe it is a question on context. Cultural tourism, certainly one that we need to explore more, and SAARC can play a pivotal role for that. And the next one is to build a digital community. Just like we have a community in our day to day lives, in person, in the physical world, digital communities are more and more important. And I do not believe that none of you do not have your own digital communities. We do interact with people in our digital personas, and that can go a long way in building a digital community. And finally, from an education and awareness perspective, when it comes to culture, when it comes to the work that SAARC does, and when it comes to regional cooperations of South Asia, I believe there is no better tool than technology. It can really amplify the work that is already being done. Before I go to the next section, how I had planned the lecture initially was to stop at each of these three sections and to have a short discussion of Q&A. But let me check that with Deputy Director Dr. Beena, if that's all right, or do you prefer that I finish the lecture series and then we have the questions?
Hello, Ashwini. Yeah, you
Yes.
complete the lecture. At the end of that, we
Sure.
have a Q&A session.
So the reason why I wanted to break after the first section was because if you have any questions, I'm happy to take it. But please, since we are definitely going to have a Q&A at the end of it, please bear with us and do ask those questions then. So note it down, and then we can have a more interactive session at that time. So the next section is technology as a creator and disruptor of culture. And many a times when we talk about culture and technology, this is the context from which we see it, of how it creates and how it can also disrupt culture. This slide and the image that you see there is the image that you also saw on the poster of today's lecture. This was AI generated, which means it was generated using a AI tool called DAL-E. It's a image to text converter, which means that what I did was I gave the prompt. I did not simply say, come up with an image for this topic. Then it will not be good enough. So I gave a more detailed prompt telling what I wanted the AI to do. And the AI came up with this image to show that when it comes to digital renaissance, so we are talking about a shift in culture and how technology is going to be playing a role in that, and that's the image that it came up with. I'll leave you to judge whether how accurate it is, but this is just to show that this was generated in a matter of seconds. Earlier this year, there was a very interesting tweet right now called X, which stated that by this author, Joanna Majewska, who said that the biggest problem with everything AI is wrong direction. She said, I want AI to do my laundry and dishes so that I can do art and writing, and not for AI to do my art and writing so that I can do my laundry and dishes. It's an interesting quote, but what we need to keep in mind is whether we like it or not, already AI is doing our art and it's also doing our writing. So, is there an issue with that? That is what we need to think about. Certainly, the point that we have to consider is AI algorithms, that is, artificial intelligence based algorithms, are now capable of generating music, art, literature, and sometimes even a full length film they are able to come up with. Excuse me. You have platforms like Juke Deck, Amber Music, Deep Art, Deep Dream, all of this that are able to come up with original music content. And they also are pushing the boundaries of seeing what exactly is music. So, for example, Google has Magenta, a project that explores AI from the setting of original music compositions. So, this is happening, and this is the reality of it. So, at one end of the spectrum, we have AI, artificial intelligence, creating art and music and various forms of expression. On the other side, AI is also making us question cultural identity as we know of it. So, for instance, when we look at ourselves and the content we consume online, so if you go on a YouTube channel or if you go on a social media platform, The content that you see are decisions made by AI powered algorithms. They know what should be recommended to us. So the content that is being given to us is also something that the AI makes a decision of. So really what we are concerned about here is, are these decisions really the decisions that we are making, or is it actually something that is being fed into us through AI systems? And so, are we being influenced by these algorithms even to identify the culture that we want to be associated with? It's probably not our own making, but based on these AI powered recommender systems, personalized advertising, media, etc. So, yes, on two ends of the spectrum, you have AI creating art. On the other end of the spectrum, you also have us questioning whether the identity, the cultural identity that we have, is also influenced by AI. But on the first point of AI creating art, what really is the problem here? The first is human creativity. When it comes to human creativity, it is rooted in emotions, experiences, individuality, etc. But AI generated art is obviously AI that is being taught to produce art and literature in very, very quick, turnaround times. We are talking about seconds, but it's really not authentic or original in the sense that it is learned to do it based on data sets of existing data. And there comes the question of copyright as well, and we'll look at it in a minute when it comes to concerns. So this brings us to a concern that we have, that is when it comes to preserving of diversity. Each of our cultures are unique and they need to be preserved for their uniqueness. But with AI influence, is there a chance of homogenization? Which means, are we going to be relying on these AI data sets that make these decisions for us, that will erase the nuances of local culture, making it more or less similar, in the sense that yes, we talk about globalization, we also talk about increasingly being in each other's lives without the differences. Yes, which is a good thing, but from a cultural perspective, diversity should be protected. And when we talk about protection of diversity, can AI's influence mean that we are moving towards homogenization, where there is the aspect of diversity that is being erased because of the nature in which these algorithms are being trained? There are also concerns on job displacement, because we are looking at creating content which can be writing a particular. Somebody had raised their hand. Is it okay if we want to take that question, please? Sure, you can use the chat option as well to put in your question so that we can take it. Job displacement as well is something that most of you would have heard about, where AI has come, it's going to take all our jobs, especially writers and artists, because AI is able to do that in probably a fraction of a second and not have to worry about these other concerns, etc. That is also something that is being talked about. And will it also mean that we lose the personal touch of having human creators? These are points that I want you to think about, and we'll come into a more holistic understanding of this as well. But what I want you to think about AI is this. Earlier, if you were to go to a designer to create a particular art piece for a campaign, it would take a considerable amount of time, and there has to be an interaction between you and the designer to make sure that you get the art that you wanted for a particular campaign. But in today's times, many of us are seated before our own computers and we are with our generative AI or image generators that are able to come up with these images. But we do not know how these images are being made. So, for example, is it someone else's copyrighted work that is just being altered and brought? Or are we not even thinking about those questions, but we are concerned that now are we also denying a person of their job by doing that? Are we even concerned about those things? Probably not, because we want the work to be done. But certainly this has an impact on jobs that culture previously offered. This brings me to an area that I do a lot of work on, and that is ethics and ownership. AI generated work, yes, but is there a concern for plagiarism? Is it someone else's work that is being taken without giving credit? And that will cause debates of intellectual property and also moral dilemmas. Should we be allowed to replicate these uh, practices? Should it be considered significant, because we are talking about culture in the form of art, culture in the form of music, culture in the form of anything else needs to have a certain respect to it. And by using AI, are we not giving it the necessary respect? Is also something that is being debated upon. As a lawyer, a lot of my work is surrounding data privacy or information privacy as we would know it. Using artificial intelligence in culture also leads to questions, and those questions can be in terms of data collection and usage. For example, how is the data being collected? How is it being used? Is any personal data involved? By personal data, we mean data relating to individuals who can be identified. The second one is profiling and behavioral targeting. That is certainly there. So, for instance, today you are discussing in SAARC Cultural Center that you probably want to have an art exhibition. And the question is, where should the art exhibition be held? It's going to be an initiative that is a physical program. So, you're thinking about venues where you want to have an art exhibition. You will see immediately after maybe a few minutes or maybe an hour, you will have recommendations of venues that you can take. In your own experiences, you might have seen many such instances, because there is a potential that there can be behavioral targeting. This is also called as personalized advertising. Profiling is different in the sense that there could be a certain profile that has already been attributed to you, and ads are targeted to persons belonging to those particular profiles. So, for example, for higher education, they may say that for higher education on language studies, they want to target persons using social media from the ages of maybe 21 to 35, and persons belonging to this particular geographical area. All of this will go into that. And surveillance through cultural platforms. Being surveilled, that is being monitored, is a reality in today's digital era that we live in. There are various forms of surveillance through cultural platforms as well. Understanding our cultural preferences can also lead to some surveillance. Yes, we are using technology, it is quite important, but at the same time, some of these areas of concerns should not be forgotten. So, yes, we are using AI generated content. It is only going to increase and it is not going to decrease. It will become more and more ubiquitous. More people will be able to use AI because it is so simple and so accessible, especially when it comes to creating art. It can be to create poems, it can be to create art, some sort of slogans to attract persons. Any of this, it can be through storytelling, it can be through script writing, etc. How is it that this will play in our future? I believe that when it comes to culture, the question is not about AI being the creator. The human element cannot be taken away from culture, but AI is a tool for human creators. That is what I believe that AI should be. It's a tool that they can use to enhance productivity. What they were not able to do, they are able to do better because of the productivity that AI is able to offer, and also for pushing boundaries of artistic expression. Perhaps this is what was conceived in the human mind, but artificial intelligence is pushing the boundaries, and that is something that we can open our eyes to as well in the creative space. Additionally, I do not think that there will ever be a situation where human creativity and authenticity is no longer needed. That is not a question, but how we are able to work together whenever there is a conflict, and also to ensure that there's authenticity and cultural significance in human made art. That would be very important. There will be entirely AI created art. There already is. But ethics call for them to be labeled as such, to say that this was AI generated content. Moving ahead, we'll see that there can be collaboration and there will be collaboration. And I do not believe that this means that one will completely substitute or displace the other. AI is here and it is here to stay. But humans have lived much far, far longer for centuries, and culture through the human lens is what really makes it culture. So I do not believe that either of these elements can be taken away and it will remain. Yes, there may be changes in jobs that are done currently, and this is what I always read, that when industrial revolution was taking place, people feared that they will lose their jobs, but the nature of their jobs changed. Similarly, AI is here to stay. It's not going to eat away all the jobs, but there will be changes in the profiles of those who are holding their jobs, because AI will make it easier, or it will show us other ways through which they can be done. So, this brings me to my last section that I want to focus on, and that is on technology redefining culture. How technology is looking at our traditional understanding of the culture. And before I go into this section, I just want to do a summary of the two areas that we already touched upon, because that will tie well into the third section. The first is, as soon as I say technology influencing culture, the first thing that comes to our mind is how we are able to perceive culture through technology. So, for example, earlier I may not have been able to go to Mexico, to a museum in Mexico, and view the art there. But right now, in the click of my computer, I'm able to see it is definitely not replaceable with a physical visit to that museum, but I'm still able to see what they have. We are also able to make sure that a large number of people are involved in cultural experiences through technology. So, access is definitely a huge step up, and we are able to do that through technology. The other one is, even without using any high end technology, existing cultural heritage, it can be artifacts, it can be art pieces, it can be certain uh, monuments. All of this and their significance may be made known to a lot of people using technology. We are able to tell stories to a lot more people through technology. These are some of the ways that it has enabled. But at the same time, when we say technology, there are lots of people who will immediately come and talk about the doom that technology brings in. And certainly, I cannot deny it. Yes, there are areas of concern, particularly when we look at creating art or creating certain creative expressions through artificial intelligence platforms, because it makes it so much easier. Does it mean that we are going to have exclusion to a lot of people? I do not believe so. But at the same time, I do believe that there is scope for making sure that people can come together in understanding how technology can work in building our understanding of culture. The last part of my lecture really is on how technology redefines the understanding of culture. For instance, memes. Those who are using social media will know what really memes are, and even if you don't, you must have seen a meme on your WhatsApp message or something. It is nothing but it uses humor and shared experiences. Two unrelated aspects are brought in, and you're able to make a commentary on events, you're able to make a commentary on history, on anything. It's a great way to reach a large number of people. And it has evolved so much that there have been studies on the power of memes in influencing culture and also in influencing politics. For example, the US elections that took place in November this year, there have been so many studies about how memes played a really important role in pushing the candidate for presidential election in the US. It is so powerful and it is increasing in the way in which people are able to connect. And even with traditional art, we are able to use memes to quickly evolve and to quickly speak with the all generations together. It can transcend age boundaries as well. And it's also about having a global language where we move from cultural barriers and we have a common dialogue, and memes can help us do that. This was very popular 2 years ago. So, 2 to 3 years ago, everybody was talking about NFTs, non fungible tokens, where you are able to create digital art. Yes, it can have a physical manifestation, but most of the time, NFTs were only confined to the digital piece of art. So, for example, you may have just drawn a picture using a pen and paper. Later, you take a picture of that and you only sell that picture that you have taken online on, and that is called as an NFT, because that digital art will be able to be sold, and millions was made on that, and everybody spoke of NFTs as the next big thing. It may not be spoken a lot because now, right now, all conversations are centered around AI, but non-fungible tokens are also here to stay, because what it does is it enables creators to sell and to prove ownership of digital art, music, or cultural artifacts. So much so, somebody was able to even sell the tweet that they made, a rough version of a music that they made. This does not mean that other versions of that cannot be sold. For that particular music, there will just be one non fungible token. There cannot be another of the same kind. And yes, there could be a physical manifestation of it, but it need not be the case. It's just even digital art on its own can be an NFT. And also, it can have a significant role in cultural preservation because we are able to digitize them for longevity through digital art. And again, it can create a community of engagement amongst all who are working together. So, in the sense that we are able to see that NFTs can bring persons together, and the authors of that, the creators of those NFTs, can also have certain engagement with the audience, and that is made possible. In today's context, the physical as well as the digital world, you will see the expressions in many instances being told as real and virtual world. But I do not want to use the word real and virtual, which means that one is real and the other one is not a real world. That's not the case. So I prefer using physical and digital world. Yes, we have physical art, but we also have digital art, which means it's a mixture of both physical as well as digital. And we are increasingly in a digital world as well, where art exists both digitally, it can be in the form of NFT, and it can also be physically present. So you have a museum piece of art, a picture of that also can be an art of its own. So this means that metaverse and virtual reality, things that we already discussed in the first part of today's discussion, are very much the order of the day, which means that we are creating new cultural spaces from emerging concepts. So, for example, you might have virtual concerts, you can have digital museums. This does not mean that you're not going to have that in the physical world. It will very much be there, but metaverse and virtual realities are also platforms we are able to assess and access culture. What this means, what really is the implication of this, is that we expand beyond cultural boundaries into the from the physical world. We understand it from a physical sense, but right now we are also able to perceive and enjoy it in the virtual reality as too. And this enables individuals to construct digital identities of their cultural preferences. We each have identity in the physical world, but there's also an increasingly important digital identity. And that's where culture plays a huge role in our identities in both physical as well as the digital space. And I believe technology can really have a crucial role, because what we access, what we are accessing, what we choose to access, all of this is already determined. Like I said, there is a system in place, and that shows us what we can access, what we don't usually access. So, in that sense, there is a definite merging or blurring of these boundaries between the physical and the digital worlds. Uh, Cultural norms and technology. When I say that we are redefining our understanding of culture, it is to move from a more traditional culture that is associated with geography and history to a more dynamic and a global and a fast evolving one, in the sense that you create these tools through which you're able to share, create content, yes, but we also break down some of these barriers that used to exist. And that barrier of perhaps language, that barrier of not understanding the local requirements, are all trying to be bridged based on the knowledge that is already being available on the in the tech space, in the digital world. And that digital world can also cause a shift in this understanding of culture to a more dynamic one. So, as we move ahead with understanding culture in the space of technology, there are a few areas that I want to stress upon. See, the title of today's discussion is on digital renaissance. I never really elaborated on it because I do not believe that at that juncture it is important to elaborate on it. But I want to take a minute to say that Renaissance is considered as this period of awakening for art and architecture and for human evolution. Similarly, I believe the digital renaissance is also right now, the time we are in, is massively altering the way that we perceive and understand and also consume and create various types of creative expression. It can be in the form of a writing, it can be in the form of filmmaking, it can be in the form of art or architecture, anything. All of this is massively influenced by culture and are massively influenced by technology and the culture that we consume also. Even if we are not creating anything, even that culture that we consume is also massively impacted by technology. So, in the sense, if you are a creator today, if you are an artist today, not only do you need to think about creating a physical piece, but you also know that you can monetize the digital version of your physical piece through an NFT. If you're a creator, you will understand that yes, I should be really careful about copywriting my work here, but at the same time, what about copywriting my work in the virtual world or in the virtual space? Because that is where the work can also get replicated and be misused. What are the precautions that need to be taken there? If you are a consumer, think about how you're consuming culture and what decisions are being made through technology. So, for example, a YouTube video that comes to us is already based on a recommender system that knows our preferences and will give us what the kind of video that we want to view. Similarly, on our social media pages, we each have N number of people who are recommending what we should view and how we choose to view that content. This decision is also made by technology. We have little control. Of course, we are able to say that I do not like to see this, and then it will get attuned. But to a large extent, the recommender systems and how it works is not very clear for us. So, yes, be it a consumer, be it a creator, technology is vastly impacting the way we perceive and understand culture. And when we say that we are talking about a digital world, which is both physical as well as digital, we are looking at a point where these distinctions based on is it digital, is it a physical piece, are also blurring because we are looking at monetizing it. In that sense, it is immaterial as to which medium in which it was created. It does not give it any less worthiness if it is a purely digital piece of work that is created. And in these blurring of spaces between the physical and the digital world, we must keep in mind that the concerns that arise from technology use cannot be overlooked. It's a great source for us to work together, but how else can we improve it is something that we must keep in mind, particularly the ethical concerns that will stem from it. More than anything else, I believe SAARC Cultural Center and such regional cooperations like SAARC are very crucial in addressing challenges that were discussed. Because if we talk about the physical space, we know which countries are involved, but we are talking about the space that is online. And in the virtual world or in the metaverse, there are no boundaries. It exists across many countries, different countries. And that is where cooperation through regional bodies like SAARC are huge in addressing any challenge. It can be privacy concerns, it can be concerns relating to theft of property or provenance. All of this is even more probable and even more possible in the digital space. How do we think of answers? From a technology policy perspective, the role that SAARC and its other bodies, such as SAARC, play is very indispensable. Without regional cooperation, we are not going to able to achieve the results we want. And in an increasingly homogenized setting, that is possible due to technology. Like I already mentioned, we are looking at a certain area through which there is increasing homogenization because of technological influence. AI particularly is being trained on certain types of data sets. It does not see the cultural nuances. It cannot, at least up until now, is not really equipped to look at those cultural nitty gritty. And which is why to create a strong South Asian identity in the digital space is something that is more important, and SAARC plays a very, very central role and pivotal role to make that a reality. Cross cultural collaboration again is something that SAARC can do. And when we talk about in the tech space that we live in today, in technology driven area, this cross cultural collaboration paves way to a more concerted action amongst all players. And while individuals are able to do it to some extent, regional cooperation can be the game changer. And I think that SAARC has a role that not only is pivotal to making sure that regionally there is cross cultural collaboration, but such cross cultural collaboration is nuanced to make sure that when we use technologies, it reaches a large number of people, and the region in itself is benefited through such collaboration, which is why we need entities and cooperations like SAARC to work in today's context. The other point that I want to focus on before I wrap up my session and we have questions, which I think what everyone is interested in, is that there is a lot of significance in understanding the role of technology in culture. Number one, it not only influences the way we perceive culture, but it also influences the way in which culture will be made accessible to a large number of people, which is why technology plays a very, very important and a role that is second to none in culture. Secondly, when it comes to addressing concerns relating to technology, we need to think of it regionally as opposed to country wise, and that's where we can have maximum impact. Examples can be the ones that we see in the EU. Thirdly, any technology can be used for both creating as well as for disrupting. And all disruption is not bad. There are disruptions which are good and which are needed. Artificial intelligence and other technologies such as generative AI really seem to scare many people, or also show that this means that humans are no longer going to be relevant. And I do not believe that is the case. In culture, in making sure that culture is more ubiquitous and understandable to a lot of people, we can use technology, but there is really no question of the human element involved in culture. But we need to be aware that there is technology, and use of that technology is only going to be amplified in the days and years to come. How best can we use that technology to leverage the various benefits of culture is what we must be thinking about and working towards actively. I'm sure you have many questions, but I want to thank you all for listening very patiently. And I hope you have questions so that we can discuss this further. And I've also put in my email address, and you can connect with me on LinkedIn if you have questions that you want to take offline and not do it online. So, thank you.
Thank you, Ashwini, for speaking on such an important and relevant subject. The digital renaissance that you have talked about has brought about a fundamental shift in how technology is shaping our culture. This transformation has brought about a new era, isn't it? Where information is readily available in our, it's readily available. No doubt technology has brought about unparalleled convenience and also efficiency in delivering information. And thank you very much. You have also spoke about the issues that need to be addressed. It also raised many concerns about the impact of technology on human interaction. With the rise of social media, as you have rightly pointed out, and the constant stimulation of digital devices, mostly like mobile, the attention spans have also shortened, isn't it? And the ability to engage in meaningful and face to face conversation has reduced. So it is very crucial to investigate these concerns and also to encourage a healthy balance between technology and real life interactions. You have also highlighted the potential ethical implications of this kind of digital revolution, especially in the context of culture. Now, I request our online participants if they have any questions. Okay, so, if you can, there is Ashwini, can you
Yes,
see?
I've seen a question. Thank you for raising that from Isani Sengupta. Thank you for raising that. It's a really important question on how you can buy fake followers. So, how can one understand that the actual original influence of any content in shaping culture in a broad perspective? It's a great question. I must add that when it comes to analytics, right now we are able to find these bot accounts, these fake accounts, if it is bot created, because usually what they do is they will just simply create that account for increasing traffic for that particular purpose, and you're able to see that. So there are ways, it's not foolproof, but there are ways right now to make sure that we are able to look through such bot accounts that were only created for the purposes of engagement and see through it. But yes, it's a menace that needs more work to be done in that regard.
Anyone else?
Yeah,
Any
I think
questions?
you've raised your hand, so please go on.
Okay, I think I'm audible now.
Yes.
Yeah, thanks for a wonderful presentation. Actually, uh, the new tech actually divide also. It's a digital divide is there. So
Yes.
if we think to do something in South Asia, like SAARC should do something.
Yes.
So in that case, we also have to think about the digital divide. So there are many people in the SAARC region who don't have access to the internet, access to the device. So in that case, how AI or VR can be introduced or that can influence their culture? That is one question. Like most of the time, it's very much challenging. Like in Korea or in China, they are using robot, but in most of the South Asian countries, like we are still depending on the child labor. So in that way, in this practical situation, how we can overcome, like using the digital technology uh, to reshape the culture, or your topics is like the digital renaissance. So how we can overcome this thing, if you can talk about that issues?
Thank you. It's a great question. One of my slides I've mentioned about the digital divide. I'll just say this. Yes, there is a reality that a lot of people still do not have access, and there is, especially in South Asia, a huge number that still does not have access, and we need to allocate resources for that. But having said that, even when there is such a huge digital divide, mobile phone penetration has been extremely high in all of South Asian countries. Several of them, even if they do not know other things, are able to operate a smartphone and easily navigate its features. So, especially with the younger generation, we see that that is the case, and several stats have proven that. So, simple AR, VR technologies do not need very expensive gadgets. We are still able to do it with just a mobile phone. And in that regard, there can still be accessibility because of the mobile phone penetration. However, is there a digital divide? 100% there is a digital divide, with a lot of people still not having access to any internet at all. It is getting better, but there is still a huge gap in terms of those who still don't have access. How do we do better for that? We definitely need more efforts. And like I said, crowdsource funding for cultural heritage projects can also be used for access, where the regional cooperations like SAARC can also support in that regard. Even crowdsource funding for certain culture based activities so that it is accessible to all, including those who don't have it, can be one way as a short term one. For a long term one, of course, we need policy and better interference from state so that we can make sure that in the long term we are able to move over this digital divide.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you very much.
Now, thank you very much. Are there any other questions from the online participants?
Yes, you've raised your hand. Please go on.
Hello, can you hear
Hello?
me?
Yes, we can hear you.
Well, first to say how much I enjoyed your presentation. I'm not an expert at all. I'm just a person who's interested. But I think your point about technology being potentially creative or disruptive, it depends how you use it, it's absolutely valid. And there's so many people who are talking about the dangers of AI. Oh my God, what's going to happen to the world? I think they have to realize that technological advancement is inevitable. If you didn't have aeroplanes, we won't be flying. You can't say I don't want to go in an airplane because it might crash. So I think that's an important point. Other thing is that you spoke about language, how we can translate from one to the other. Do you think that it also wider in the sense that you can change the language to a less technical language for, say, a different audience which hasn't got the same expertise? So, for example, you want to teach young children or older adolescents who might not have the expertise. Now, this is a quick way of translating it to something intelligible. And the last point I want to say is that I I personally won't worry too much about cultural homogenization. To me, that's not a bad thing. It's like saying, let's make a different soup and put some more ingredients and make it more tasty. The important thing is to remember what the ingredients are and never forget that those ingredients are important to make soup. So to me, cultural homogeneity is a good thing, to remove barriers, become more of a humanity. So to me, that's a plus point. Anyhow, those are my points. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. I really particularly want to thank you for raising that point on how it can simplify to the audience. So, for example, for an older audience who may not know anything on a particular subject matter, it can be made more accessible to them, or to a younger audience who probably need it to be simplified further. That's excellent. And that's why they say that AI powered platforms are a step up from existing translation tools. Yes, from one language, from Hindi to Sinhala or Sinhala to Tamil, yes, we had those capabilities. But how does AI make it even better? It is as though we have a personal expert there who's able to understand that just language translation is insufficient. We have to go beyond that. And they are able to make that decision. So thank you for raising that. Yes, that is an integral part of at least how they think that it can be. At least those who create those platforms say that that is the extent to which we are able to personalize when it comes to AI powered language tools. The other point that you made on cultural homogenization, it's excellent to hear that point. The reason I brought it up is because many a times when I discuss on culture and technology, the pushback that I get from most cultural traditionalists have always been, you are talking about it, but you're not understanding that, how important it is to have our own indigenous ways and to have our own cultural nuances. So at today's presentation, I specifically added that because I don't want to say that, it's not that it's immaterial. I do not think that it is immaterial that you have your own cultural differences. But I'm pointing out that, yes, in technology, there is a potential of homogenization. We cannot deny that as well. It's not that I'm trying to cover it, but that's a reality. But it's great to know that you have this perspective that it is not a bad thing, and I share those sentiments too, that it need not always be a bad thing. I agree that too much of it is not good. We have our own unique cultures and our own unique voice that should not get erased. But yes, it's not per se a bad thing. So thank you for both those points.
Thank you very much. Every coin has two sides. Thank you.
Uh, in that case, once again, thank you, Ashwini, for on behalf of SAARC Cultural Center. I express my sincere thanks to you for sharing your invaluable insights with us, and I also thank our online participants for their active engagement. Once again, thank you all for joining. We hope you found the lecture informative and inspiring. We update.
I think there's a
I think
question
there is
at
a question. Okay.
yes,
Is there any particular platform?
platform when one can get expertise in the said field. Okay, thank you for that question. So essentially, there is no one particular platform as such, but then I can tell you this. If you look at the updates that are being taking place through big tech companies. So for example, Google constantly comes up with its through its cultural arm, arts and cultural arm. They come up with new innovative ideas for making sure that culture is more accessible to a larger number, or they have technologies relating to that. That's one way to see it. The other one that you can keep track of these updates can be through tech updates that are available on certain websites, like for culture related ones, which I will share with Dr. Daniel, who can just forward it to the group. Then there are a few sites that will be useful for you to see, but there's not just one particular site.
Okay, thank you, Ashwini. So, for those who joined us for the first time, just to inform you that we update all our upcoming events in our SARC website as well as Facebook. So, please like the Facebook page so that you get all the notifications of our upcoming events. We look forward for your support, and we also hope that you will participate in our future events.
Sure, there's a question again on whether one can pursue a career in it. Definitely. There is 100% chance of you or anyone wanting to prefer a career, like I said, because it's not that I mean that everybody is now an artist. Certainly not the case. I don't believe that I have it in me to be that. But if you are someone who's passionate about any creative expression, but you also want to see that how culture can influence it and use culture to amplify your work to make it better, there is 100% a career in it, and there are so many people who are thriving in this, and we are still in stages where you can make these mistakes and understand how to do better. It's not yet a stage where it's so saturated, not yet. So I believe definitely there is potential for a career in it. I've put in my LinkedIn details as well, so please write to me, and so that I can send you some slides as well and some sites that you can use for this purpose.
Okay, so I think Ashwini has given her email. So those who need to in like in need of more information can write to her. So Ashwini, once again, thank you very much.
Thank you
Okay,
so much for having me. It was a pleasure.
same here.